Every day you live and work inside systems. But most of the time you don't see them. They're the invisible structures that shape how projects succeed or fail, how decisions ripple through organizations, and how small actions create big results. Talking systems. How to make complexity understandable shows you how to spot these hidden patterns, explain them clearly, and use them to think and act more effectively, without drowning in jargon or diagrams. Because when you can talk about systems, you can finally make sense of the complexity you've been navigating all along. Before we go deeper into systems, it's worth stepping back to see where this book fits. It belongs to the Mastering Professional Conversation series, a collection of concise, deeply practical books designed to help you take big, abstract professional concepts and make them talkable. The series starts from a simple truth. In professional life, it's not enough to know something. You have to be able to talk about it in a way that others can understand, trust, and act on. This is true whether you're running a company, teaching a class, building a coalition, or pitching a creative project. Each title in the series focuses on one powerful idea: value, strategy, ethics, agency, flow, analytics, learning, sustainability, innovation, coordination, and here, systems. The aim is not just to explain these concepts, but to give you the language, examples, and conversational moves to make them work for you in real settings. They are short enough to read in one sitting, but deep enough to revisit over and over. They blend practical tools with vivid stories, and they're academically grounded without feeling academic. These are books for leaders, educators, professionals in any field, and students building conceptual fluency. Anyone who has to align people across silos and keep work moving in complex, interdependent environments. Systems is a perfect topic for this series because it is both everywhere and invisible. We use the word casually. We talk about the education system, the healthcare system, IT systems, political systems, but too often, system is just shorthand for a complicated thing, or a bunch of procedures. In its deeper sense, systems thinking is about seeing relationships rather than isolated parts. It's about understanding that in complex environments, outcomes don't come from a single cause, they emerge from interactions. Here's the problem. Most of our training and much of our language pulls us toward fragmentation. We're taught to break things into smaller parts, to isolate variables, to solve problems one at a time. That works fine for simple mechanical problems, like repairing a bicycle, but it fails in complex environments where the parts constantly affect each other. You can fix one problem and accidentally create 3 new ones elsewhere. You can pour resources into improving one process, only to find the real bottleneck was somewhere else entirely. Seeing systems starts with asking better questions. If a project keeps stalling, most people look for a single cause: a difficult client, unclear requirements, not enough budget. A systems thinker asks, how do these factors interact? What feedback loops are keeping this pattern in place? What's reinforcing it? The book offers simple, practical ways to sketch systems, not with intimidating blueprints, but with cause and effect loops and stakeholder maps that help people share a common picture of what's really happening. The goal isn't a perfect model. It's a map that gets everyone seeing the same terrain. One of the most useful lenses is the idea of loops. A reinforcing loop is where an action produces results that encourage more of the same action. A balancing loop is where an action produces results that push the system back towards stability. Imagine a customer service team. Faster responses lead to happier customers, which leads to more positive reviews, which leads to more customers. That's a reinforcing loop. But more customers can also mean longer queues, which, unless addressed, will push satisfaction back down a balancing loop. Understanding which loops are at play keeps you from assuming more is always better, or that one fix will last forever. If you want a mental image for loops, think of them as the thermostat in your house. When the temperature drops below a set point, the heating kicks in a balancing loop. When you keep turning the thermostat up because you like it warmer and warmer, you create a reinforcing loop until your heating bill tells you to stop. The thermostat doesn't care whether you're comfortable. It just responds to signals. Systems do the same. Language itself is one of the most powerful tools you have for making systems visible. The way you describe a situation shapes how people see it and what solutions they imagine. If you call a team fragmented, you've primed people to expect conflict. If you call it diverse, you've framed the same reality as a potential strength. If you describe your organization as a machine, you'll tend to focus on fine-tuning and efficiency. If you call it an ecosystem, you'll think about balance and resilience. The book challenges you to choose your metaphors carefully, because they quietly decide the range of actions people will consider reasonable. There are stories here from logistics, where thinking in terms of flows, buffers, and bottlenecks help teams solve problems that linear thinking couldn't. There are examples from healthcare, where efficiency drives had to be balanced with patient well-being, and from education, where changes in curriculum rippled through teaching methods, assessment, and student engagement in unexpected ways. In each case, shifting the language changed the thinking, and shifting the thinking opened up better solutions. One festival story captures the power of seeing the whole system. A cultural event was losing attendance year after year. The organizers assumed the problem was marketing. They bought bigger ad space, hired flashier acts, and built slicker websites. Nothing changed. Only when they mapped the system did they see the real issue. Housing costs in the city had driven out the local families who had traditionally been the festival's core audience. Marketing wasn't solving the wrong problem. It was aimed at the wrong part of the system. The real leverage point was rebuilding community connections, not buying more billboards. Another example comes from manufacturing. A plant's push for efficiency brought defect rates down, but accident rates went up. The system map revealed that the rush for speed had reduced informal worker conversations, so near misses weren't being shared. The fix wasn't slowing production. It was redesigning workflow so those conversations could happen without halting the line. Seeing the connections changed the solution. You'll also see how systems thinking changes perspective in a small-scale setting. Picture a local cafe that suddenly starts losing money. The owner blames high coffee bean prices. But when they map the situation, they see that rising prices were just one factor. There was also a new commuter route that bypassed their street, a change in local parking rules that discouraged quick stops, and an unnoticed decline in their lunchtime menu quality. No single factor explained the loss, but together, they formed a web of interactions. Fixing only bean prices would have done little. Systems thinking also teaches you to look for leverage points, the small changes that can make the biggest difference. Donella Meadows, one of the great voices in the field, showed that leverage often sits in places we overlook. In the rules that shape behavior, in the way information flows, in the underlying goals of the system. Push hard in the wrong place and nothing moves. Push gently in the right place and the whole system shifts. This book is about making that kind of thinking conversational. It's one thing to see the system yourself. It's another to bring that perspective into a meeting without losing people in complexity. You'll find practical moves. Start with something visible and concrete, then connect it to the larger pattern. Use because and then to link actions to downstream effects. Invite others to add what you might be missing. When you make systems talk collaborative, you avoid being the person with the incomprehensible diagram and start being the person who helps the room see the bigger picture together. Of course, there are traps to avoid. You can overcomplicate things, burying people in jargon and models. You can slip into analysis paralysis, waiting for the perfect understanding before you act. You can ignore boundaries, treating the system as closed when in fact it's affected by a wider context. Each of these pitfalls has an antidote, and the book walks you through how to keep your thinking practical and your conversations grounded. This matters more now than ever. We live in an age of complexity, where global supply chains that stretch across continents, organizations built from interdependent technologies, social and environmental challenges that cross every political and sectoral boundary. In such an environment, systems thinking isn't a luxury. It's the difference between fighting symptoms and addressing root causes, between chasing short-term fixes and building long-term resilience. And yet in most workplaces, systems talk is rare. People deal with complexity every day but describe it in ways that fragment it. This book exists to make it not just acceptable but easy to bring systems language into your everyday conversations. Once you start seeing systems, you can't unsee them. And once you can talk about them clearly, you can bring others with you, aligning teams, avoiding unintended consequences, and finding leverage points that make change easier. Talking Systems: How to Make Complexity Understandable is more than a set of ideas. It's a way to shift how you see and shape the work you do. It's concise enough to read in an afternoon, rich enough to keep on your desk, and practical enough to apply tomorrow. You can get your copy right now on Amazon, and the link is in the comments section. Start seeing the systems you've been living in all along, and start shaping them with confidence.